So David, welcome.
Thank you.
To Prague, and I have also some questions for you.
Okay.
Well, and we both work in alternative media scene, and sometimes it's our work is called some kind of info war, information war. So I would like to ask about the condition of independent or alternative media in Great Britain, about freedom of speech. Does it really exist now in Great Britain? Because I would like I will shortly explain the situation in our country. In fact, I can say that we still have the freedom of speech because the people are not punished. Yeah, we still can publish whatever on internet. Yeah, we don't have access to mainstream media, of course, but just few people. I mean, in last 10 years, let's say, they were blamed for some kind of something like anti-Semitic stuff and this, but nobody was sentenced. Yeah, nobody is in jail.
Right.
So, what's the situation in Great Britain?
Well, I think you can't look at Great Britain without looking at the bigger picture, not least of the internet. Of course, still, I mean, look at what I say and do. You can still express yourself. But two things. First of all, this whole self-censorship and the population censoring itself that we call political correctness is becoming more and more prevalent in Britain, as it is in the United States and elsewhere, where you can say something, all right, you can actually say it, but then you get the big antagonistic condemnation coming back. That how dare you say that it's not politically correct. I mean, I don't care, you know, I don't affect me, I say it anyway. But a lot of people then start to self-censor themselves and don't say it because they don't want that reaction. So that's becoming more and more significant in silencing people. The other side of this, and this is global, is that the internet giants like Google, who of course own YouTube, and Facebook and such like, they are not, in the end, independent companies.
Of course.
They answer to the same masters, and there is a common theme now that's starting to emerge. Facebook, for a start, is censoring more and more of what is allowed to be posted as content and banning people if they digress these ludicrous rules they have.
Okay.
And therefore, again, the most insidious type of censorship, the most sinister type of censorship is self-censorship. See, this is what happens in the mainstream media. When you're a mainstream journalist, and you know that if you offer a story, that it's going to get what's known in the industry as spiked. In other words, they're not going to put it in the paper and they're not going to put it on air. Then what you do is you stop offering those kind of stories and you just offer those stories that you know have got a chance of getting in. That's self-censorship. And self-censorship is so sinister because there's no debate. There's no debate about why is it not going in, what's the problem. It's not put in anymore. And I'm seeing this more and more in terms of social media. And then there's YouTube, and this is extremely significant, where they are demonetizing videos that are dealing in subjects that the system does not want circulated. Only yesterday, as we speak, all my videos on YouTube on Syria and ISIS and one on 9/11 were demonetized. Now, that doesn't affect me so much because I produce books and I do talks, so I'm not dependent on them. But a lot of people in the alternative media are dependent to keep going in a full-time way on money they get from advertising of YouTube videos. So this is a selective, calculated targeting of the income of people in the alternative media to stop them functioning. And now there's this emerging, outrageous plan by YouTube to create a system whereby if you reach a certain level in this system as a member of the public, you can start deleting other people's videos. Now this is to avoid the in-your-face, authority or hierarchy of YouTube, i.e. Google, saying we're taking this down. So it's just another form of political correctness. You get the target population to silence itself. So when I look at the way it's going, it is very, very sinister and very, very obvious and very, very predictable. And what the alternative media needs to do is build its own platforms. Not after, all this has happened, but before it, the really final deletion of content is reached, so that we have our own platforms to put out videos that are then able to be monetized for the alternative media who need that income to keep going. And in the United States, it's even more advanced. If it's not affecting the Czech Republic now, it will. If this is allowed to continue to expand, because they want global censorship everywhere the same.
Yeah, it's also here. Yeah, the YouTube stuff and the censorship of Facebook. Yeah, it's already happening, and as you mentioned, that the suppressing is going through economy, through income. And this is also a big problem for all independent media in our country also. So we depend on advertising also, and we depend on money from our readers. So how much people in Britain understand that they need to support independent media?
Well, I mean, some do, and some take it for granted. The real thing we're looking for is for the independent media to be financially independent of everything. But this is what is now being targeted. Because what we've been watching step by step is a long-term plan whereby these media organizations, like the monster that is Google and the monster that is Facebook, they come along and like the guy I call the T-shirt, Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. I mean, the idea that Mark Zuckerberg controls Facebook is hilarious to me. He's just a face, a front man. And so they come along, hey man, I'm one of you, ain't it great, social media, hey, great. And Google, hey Google, I'm going to Google this, I'm going to Google that, isn't it great? And then they get such, as always planned, they get such a massive part of the circulation of information market. They get control of so much of the search engine traffic and where information that is emphasized and other stuff that's put away where no one would not normally see it unless they're looking for it. And then when they reach that point, and we're there, where they think they're strong enough and big enough, then hey man, that's gone. Now we're deciding what you see and what you don't see. And this is what's unfolding now. And this is why we need our own platforms and our own means to monetize videos outside of the system. Because if the alternative media waits and waits and waits, then it's going to be gone. It needs to happen now.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, when I mentioned that nobody here is in prison for publishing, well, in Britain there is Julian Assange.
Yeah.
I think it's already 4 years on the Ecuador embassy. Have you met him?
No, I've not met him. No, but I mean, there's a lot of different angles to this. You know, I think it's great that information is leaked so we can see it. I think it's great what Edward Snowden has done. But I look at the WikiLeaks caches of documents and communications and email releases and revelations. I don't think I've seen much exposing Israel, for a start, right? The other thing about Assange is he outrageously and on the face of it, extraordinarily, dismisses any idea that 9/11 was anything but the official story. An official story, by the way, given us by the same people, the very same people that told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq when they knew they weren't, to justify a catastrophic war and a catastrophic aftermath in the Middle East. And in terms of, you know, so I've got big questions about Assange. Because I know from my own research over many years the fundamental involvement of Israel in world affairs, because Israel equals the Rothschilds, and the fact that WikiLeaks have not exposed anything really that exposed Israel is a big red flag to me. But there's another point, and that is this idea that yes, some on the level of politicians like Clinton and what have you, they don't like having their emails leaked and what have you. But if you go deeper into the rabbit hole, it's not necessarily a bad thing for the deeper levels of this hidden hand, that these revelations, like from Edward Snowden, about the scale of surveillance, and it's much greater than even he's pointing out, it's not necessarily a bad thing that it's coming out for this reason. There's an old technique, goes back centuries apparently, whereby you let people know they're being watched, but at any time they don't know if they're being watched or if they're not. So psychologically they start to live their lives as if they're always being watched. And this brings us back to what we were just talking about. It brings us back to this whole arena of self-censorship. So suddenly, well, I'm being watched, I better not do this, I'm being watched, I better not do that, or I might be being watched, I don't know if I am or not. So you have Orwell's telescreens, like we now call smart TVs. This is only Mark 1 or 2 of smart TVs, not whether it's designed to go. They're designed to go into what Orwell described in terms of the telescreens, watching you and recording you in your own homes. It's already going on through these revelations about Samsung. So it's like if you know, and all this surveillance, all this stuff where you're searching your surfing history is recorded by the authorities. If you tell people, actually through revelations, we don't really want you to know, but we're telling you, then people start to say, well, hold on, shall I go there? What if I'm being, what will they think? And you start to self-censor yourself. So it's not necessarily a bad thing for the authorities, because, you know, people like at the level of politicians like Hillary Clinton, etc., well, they think it's bad because they personally are being exposed. But if you go deeper in the rabbit hole, where those people are not on public display, they couldn't give a damn what the public think. Certainly not about Hillary Clinton or anyone else at the political level, because they're just pawns in the game anyway.
So, is it possible that these two men, I mean, Julian Assange and Edward Snowden, are just part of the bigger game?
Well, the question is, they're part of the bigger game, but to what extent are they aware of that? I actually
Yeah,
think,
that's the question.
I think Edward Snowden, he comes across to me as a genuine man.
It looks like.
I mean, who knows in the end? But he comes across to me as a genuine man. Assange, I'm not sure I would trust to tell me the time in a room full of clocks, personally. Although there have been some good leaks where we've seen things that we wouldn't normally see, and that's all good. But you know, and I think the way that the leaker of that big cache, now known as Chelsea Manning, I think she was hung out to dry, really, because it was clear that from what was released that the leaker was going to be found, and of course it's destroyed that person's life. So I'm not delirious about the way Chelsea Manning was treated by WikiLeaks, but it's good this stuff's coming out. But there's something. I just think there's a backstory there we've not been told yet.
Okay, future will show us.
Yeah, absolutely. Either way.
Well, now I would like to ask for a few topics which are quite difficult to understand people. Yeah, well, if we look about on the last 10 years, there was many important things revealed by you and by, all alternative media globally. Things like what is it, New World Order,
right?
How the bank works, who are the Rothschilds and other families, what happened or what not happened on 9/11, and all of this.
Yeah.
And there are still some other areas which are really difficult to confirm.
Yeah.
Which about you speak and some other alternative media? Well, there are first of all, I would like to ask about aliens or non-human intelligent beings.
Right.
Yeah, there is a little bit much controversial information. So, what could be the best proof or best information how to tell people that look at this and when you study, for example, some special case, that you will be sure that these beings really exist.
Right.
Well, we have crop circles, for example. Is there something else?
Well, I think you know.
What's the reality?
What I do is I look at a range of information, ancient and modern, and I'm looking for common themes. And the common themes are extraordinary if you're prepared to look for them. But let's just start from the basics. And that is that according to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in this universe. Visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can actually see, is a fraction, or a tiny fraction, of the 0.005%. Which means that humanity, compared with what exists even in this universe, never mind beyond it, is basically blind. Almost the entirety of existence we can't see. Then you look within this sliver of frequency called visible light, and you look at what mainstream science says about the size of planet Earth compared with the universe, and they estimate that it's the equivalent, the Earth, of a billionth of a pinhead compared with the estimated size of the universe. So let's get that for a start and say this. I think it's fair to say that there is other life in the universe that we would perceive as intelligent, other than humans. And maybe, intelligence in humans in terms of the way this world is run might be questionable. Potentially intelligent, I think, is the best way of putting it. So it's clear that...
But in fact, this is the official statement of the scientists.
Yeah, it's clear to anyone with half a brain cell on active duty that there are other forms of life in this almost entirety of the universe that we can't see. Now, this is why when I talk about this reality being manipulated from the hidden, this is what I'm talking about. It's being manipulated from outside of this sliver of frequency that we can actually see. That's why it's hidden, because we can't see it. And when you then look through the ancient cultures, and then the insiders that I've talked to over the years as well, who want to get this information out, there are extraordinary common themes. And one is that there is a malevolent force in the hidden manipulating human affairs. And these different cultures call this force different names. The Gnostics of Egypt and southern France, like the Cathars, they call this force the Archons. The Islamic and actually pre-Islamic world, where it came from, call this force the Jinn. And the way the Gnostics describe the Archons and the Islamic world describes the Jinn is absolutely, virtually identical. Then you've got the Chitahuri of the Zulus, and you've got the demons of Christianity. All these are different names for this malevolent force in the hidden. And so when you put the dots together, and this is what has to happen, because if and to a certain extent it has to happen. You do a video about this, you do a video about that, you do a video about that. You can't tell the whole story every time you do a video. So you are, look at, this is a dot, this is a dot, that's a dot. But what I do in the books and in these events, these all-day events, is I connect the dots. And when you do, you start to think, well, it's extraordinarily compelling that there is some force, not human, that is manipulating human affairs. And I would say to people this, okay, but you can comfortably go back centuries, actually it was thousands of years, but you can comfortably go back centuries and chart this manipulation of human affairs where centralization of power is a constant theme. So every time you centralize power, fewer people control more people. And now we've got this thing, globalization, and all these trade deals, and the desire for a world government in this agenda, where power's getting incredibly concentrated, so fewer and fewer and fewer people are dictating to everyone else. Now, this is the point, it's where I'm going. Through this period of hundreds of years, actually thousands, people have been coming in to this world, being born, they have served this agenda, and they've died, and then someone else has come in, other people have come in, and they've done it for the next generation, they've done it for the next generation. And therefore, why would people come into this world and spend their lives manipulating it towards this ultimate goal of total global control, when they would know they had absolutely no chance of seeing it reach fruition? There has to be a common theme, a common force that spans this whole period, and that's this hidden hand operating outside of the world of the human scene. But people just need to look at the dots and see how they connect, and then make their own minds up what they want to believe.
Okay, so now we have just many thousands and thousands dots, yeah, which we can connect, but something really hard evidence.
Well, it depends what you mean by hard evidence. I mean, if you've got lots of people coming out and saying I've been abducted by non-human entities, reptilian, greys, whatever, and they're manipulating human society, well, people then have to choose if they accept that or not. I mean, to the person who's experienced it, That's hard evidence. But to the person hearing the account, they have to decide if that's hard evidence. Unless you have these entities manifesting in front of everybody on the TV news, what can we call hard evidence? You've got endless people who have been insiders, particularly in America, within these programs, within NASA, within the military-industrial complex, who've come out and said, actually, this is what's going on. So is that hard evidence? I think what people have to do, and this is what I do in my work, is I look at the totality of the evidence from all the different sources, and then I look at the common themes. And it's extremely compelling, ancient and modern, that this world is manipulated by a non-human force. And what that does is make sense of so much. It brings all the strands together into a picture, into a tapestry. Once you take that into account, and if that's not happening, then the world makes no sense, because it's quite obvious, even if you only research in the realms of the scene, that there are networks that are manipulating human society. Okay, so they've been doing it for hundreds, thousands of years. Okay. What's the common theme? And the common theme is it has to be something that's not in the human society.
Yes. Okay. Well, it seems also that we have to wait for more hard evidence.
Yeah.
2 years.
Or look at the vast number of supporting themes, ancient and modern, and come to the conclusion that actually there's a very good chance this is happening. And I've been researching this for 26 years, and I have no doubt whatsoever that this is what's happening.
Yeah, of course, it's possible to come to conclusion when somebody studies things. Yeah, but it takes time, and for many people it's difficult.
But tell you what I'm finding. Mm-hmm. I'm finding that more than ever before, and I travel a lot all over the world, so I'm meeting different people from different backgrounds in different countries, and there are more people now, vastly more, who are open to this big step into the fact that actually, the world is not manipulated by forces we thought it was, or is not controlled by forces we thought it was, and more people are open to the fact that maybe actually there is a non-human element to this. So people are opening their minds more than ever before to actually what, like we talked about a few minutes ago, is painfully obvious that there is obviously other life outside of human life that we call intelligent. And if you have that vastness of potential of other forms of life, then some of it's going to be malevolent. I mean, look at the human race. Much of it is very nice. Some of it's absolutely unbelievably malevolent. So it's bound to be the same basic situation in the unseen as it is in the tiny sliver of seen that we call the world.
Okay, there is a similar situation in the so-called chemtrails.
Right.
Yeah. Many people don't know if it exists and if in which scale. Yeah. So now we have also many people who, many insiders, who spoke about that.
I've got a great way of proving that chemtrails exist. What you do is you go outside and you go like that, right? That's all you need to do most days, right? What are those streaks coming out of that plane that don't disappear like contrails and get wider and wider and then start to come down? I mean, what is it? Oh, it's Superman. That's who it is. He's making them. Again, because I travel so much, I've seen these things everywhere.
Of course.
And I sat once in Arizona, and not far from where I was sitting is the Luke Air Force Base. And of course, Arizona being Arizona, the sky when the day started was beautiful blue sky, no clouds. And I sat there for hours watching planes taking off from the direction of Luke Air Force Base. These were small planes, and crisscrossing the sky with these trails that never disappeared like condensation trails, and watching the stream move together. So by mid-afternoon, I'm looking at a cloudy sky, except it wasn't cloud, it was stuff coming out of these planes. Now, again, what is that? A mirage? There's something going on. And as you rightly say, when you put the connections together, more and more people are coming out from the inside and saying this is true. And people are doing the analysis of the stuff in them, and they're finding all this aluminium and barium and what have you. And I think I'm absolutely convinced nanotechnology's in there. And therefore, people can go, I can't see anything. What are you talking about? Or they can look at it and go, there's something going on here. And that's all down to the mentality and perception of people. Do you want to know? Or do you want to go, no, it's not really happening? Because I don't want it to be happening, so I'm going to say it's not.
Yeah, but when we also in our country asked about that the official authorities, from the meteorology institute and something like that, they says, well, it's normal, yeah, the planes are doing this, they are cold rays, yeah, and now, it's very difficult for ordinary people to understand meteorology, yeah, so it's still so difficult to explain to people.
Well, it is, and it isn't. I mean, all you can do with any of these subjects is explain it in the best way you can, with as much evidence as you can, and then people just have to make of it what they will. You can't force people to see it. But the excuses have changed. First of all, no, they're just contrails. And now we're getting more and more this idea, oh yeah, well we are putting something out there, but it's to do with global warming. We're just keeping the sun out, So the excuses change as more and more people go, hold on a minute. They're not contrails, are they? I mean, look at them. Oh yeah, we need a different excuse now. Okay, it's to protect us from global warming, which is not actually happening. When you see these changing excuses, there's again another reason for the alarms to go off and say, what is happening here? But personally, and I'm going to go into this in the event in Prague, as I do in my latest book, I think chemtrails are fundamentally connected to the transhumanist agenda, because I think they contain a nanotechnology. I have for a long time, and when you've got transhumanist promoters of Frankenstein, like Google's Ray Kurzweil, trying to sell this idea of we'll become superhuman, and where he's talking about all trees, all natural life, all rocks will be infused with nanotechnology, right? Well, excuse me, Ray, how do you think you're going to do that? Is someone going to go around the world with a backpack spraying everything with nanotechnology? Of course not. It's got to come from the sky, and that's what I would say a major thing about chemtrails is.
It seems there is similar situation. We have thousands of dots, but no hard evidence.
Well, see, okay, you can have a situation where you have loads of dots, and then you look at the totality of the dots, and that totality of the dots equals hard evidence. In and of themselves, that each individual dot might not, but the totality of them does. And so, if we're going to understand something that wishes to remain hidden, that doesn't wish to be seen, that doesn't wish to be exposed, then if you're waiting for, I don't know, the government to come out and say, yeah, actually what we're doing is these chemtrails, they've got nanotechnology in, and they've got diseases in, and they've got aluminium in, and they've got barium in. It's really bad for you. And what we're doing is we're putting them out there because we're trying to destroy your immune system, and we want you to breathe in nanotechnology, what they now call smart dust, neural dust, so that we can connect you to technology without you even agreeing. How about that? Yeah, okay. Now it's Bill with the weather, right? I mean, they're not going to do that. They're not. So we have to look at the totality of the information and say, okay, look at the totality. What do you think? Because what people that don't want to look at this stuff, don't want to look at any of this stuff, are doing is show me the hard evidence then, right?
Well, I understand it.
What do you want, a spaceship? Really, a spaceship landing on the White House lawn? I mean,
yes.
and even then they say, oh, that's not hard evidence, that's just a hoax, right? So there's some people are never going to do that, so they have to be left to get on with it.
I
right?
understand, but I'm looking for a way how to explain it to other people. Yeah?
How to explain it to other people is to systematically dot leads to dot leads to dot, put the dots together. That's why I talk for 10 hours, not because I love the sound of my own voice, but there's so many dots to connect so that people see the totality of the evidence rather than just, this is a video about this, a video about that.
Okay.
When it's put together, I can tell you from, talking around the world on this tour since June, that people who have come along, sometimes with a friend, oh, come on, you've got to go see this guy, oh, I've never heard of him, what's up? They walk out like, whoa, it makes sense, even though, some of it's massively far out, but to normal perception. But this is why the dots need to be connected. And if you don't connect the dots, all you've got is a series of interesting facts that actually do not take us into the realm of what you call hard evidence.
Okay, I have the same questions about something which is called free energy.
Right.
And there are possibly more sources of energy which doesn't comes from the what is usual in present world. I'm not really sure. Have you met the Nassim Haramein?
No.
No. Never mind.
I know of him.
Oh, fine. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because he's doing pretty interesting research.
Right.
So again, what do you think that, or do you know about some other people who really proved that they have something which can make some revolution in?
Let's again look at the totality of the evidence, and let's start with Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was a scientific genius of his day, because he realized, and you can see this in his quotes, that to understand this world you have to go into the realm of frequency, you have to go into the realm of energy, actually beyond the seen, beyond this visible light frequency band of the seen to humans. And he built technology in the early part of the 20th century that basically could cause earthquakes. He caused tremors in America, to the point where he took the vast numbers of windows out. He created lightning above his laboratory, and he built a tower based on his research that showed him that there were unseen forces of electricity and electromagnetism that could be tapped in to give us all the warmth and power we want and need without fossil fuels. Now, Nikola Tesla, who showed this, died virtually penniless in a hotel room in New York in 1943. Why? Because he had understood how to tap into this universal natural electromagnetic electrical force and turn it into usable warmth and power. Of course, all the energy companies, they didn't want that to come out. Now, if we come further forward, there is a whole area of scientific research now which I talk about in the books and will on Saturday, which is called the electric universe. And this is a whole area of research into the fact, quite absolutely spot on, that basically there is a level of this universe which is electricity and which is electromagnetism. And it's not only that, I would go further and say that it's a whole network of communication, electrical communication, which is why the brain works electrically, etc. And we're interacting with this energetic electrical field. They are showing that the sun is not a nuclear reactor that is creating power from the center, but is actually a processor of electromagnetic information from the universal field. And it's really great research. And what they're uncovering is that exact level of the universe that Tesla was talking about. This electromagnetic level which you can tap into and turn into usable warmth and power. Now, the people who are trying to sell us this global warming hoax as a justification of transforming global society in the image that they want. They are the same people, we must stop fossil fuel. They're the same people who are suppressing this technology that can give us all the warmth and power we need without fossil fuels. But once the technology is in place, once you've got the technology in your home or whatever, there's no more utility bills, there's no more energy bills, because that is just giving you power from the natural electrical sources all around us. And therefore, that's the worst nightmare of a system that wants people to be enslaved to itself by the need to pay the bills. The more you've got to pay bills, the more you serve the system to pay the bills. The fewer bills you have, the less you have to serve the system. That is not where they want to go. So it's clear and becoming clearer and clearer that all the energy we need is all around us to be tapped into, and this is being suppressed by the very people that say we must stop using fossil fuels. I mean, they're scarring the landscape with wind turbines. I flew to Prague across the English Channel, and I looked out the window, and there were these kind of farms of wind turbines in the ocean, in the Channel. They put them all over Britain, right, on the land. And they came out a few weeks ago and said, actually, they're not really effective because there's not enough wind on the land in England. Well, how about finding that out before you put them up? So all this nonsense is going on. We've got the European Union saying it's going to ban certain types of hairdryer and lawnmower to save the planet from global bloody warming, while all this energy that we can turn into usable warmth and power without going to fossil fuels is suppressed, and that's what's going on. I mean, it's extraordinary. But once again, the key to keeping people in servitude is to hold people in this tiny band of perception created from a tiny band of possibility which is given to them by the mainstream media. And unless you go outside of the mainstream media, you'll never see what's really going on or even know there's such a thing as free energy. Same with everything else.
Okay, we will see. And I have one more question. There is a situation of this child kidnapping, and somebody says or talks about some bloody rituals with children. Well, it's not. I think it's not much happening in our country, so people don't know about this much. But in American or Western Europe, I have read a lot about it. So, what's the situation in Britain with this? And
well,
also, I would like to ask about some really hard evidence and or about some special story, which everybody can see and understand.
Well, again, I can speak from my experience. I can speak about people that have spoken to me, which is hard evidence to me when different people all around the world are telling you the same thing in terms of their experience. But whether people accept that the stories are real depends whether they accept it to be hard evidence or not. See, this hard evidence thing is a complete red herring, because hard evidence to one person is not hard evidence to another. But I remember when I was in America in 1996, I met someone who'd had her actually foster children taken away, or children she was going to foster taken away in the most extraordinary, extreme way. And I started to follow this through to try to help her. And I ended up calling the federal government and asking how many children went missing in America every year. Great percentages of them never to be seen again, at least officially. They said they couldn't give me that information because they didn't compile that number. But as I found out, they could tell me how many cars went missing, how many cars were stolen in America every year at the federal level. And they said to me, if you want to find out that number, you're going to have to ring every state, and right? So there's 50 states. I got to about 10, and my mind was freaking blown by the number of children in those states that went missing every year. Many of them never to be seen again. Some, of course, there will be an explanation, but many of them go missing. Then I was talking to Credo Mutwa, a Zulu shaman in South Africa, who was telling me how many South African children were going missing, which was another extraordinary number. And in his area, his village, they actually had started, not vigilante, but they had created networks to watch the children, because the children were just disappearing, right? Now, so there's that level of it, where children just disappear. And then there's this whole area, which is massive in Britain and the United States and North America in general, where social services are taking children from loving parents on the most spurious, outrageous excuses and handing them to state foster families. And of course, we've also had this extraordinary level of exposure in Britain in recent years of the abuse of children in children's homes, the so-called care homes in Britain, where a lot of the rich and famous have been highlighted for being involved. I've done a lot of that exposure myself. And when you then talk to people who've been on the inside of mind control programs and government programs, and they will tell you that the stealing of children is an epidemic, because this hidden hand wants children. And again, you have to connect the dots across a vast range, ancient and modern. And you go back to the whole concept of the ancients sacrificing young virgins to the gods. Well, young virgins is just code for children. This hidden force that I'm talking about, this manipulating human society, it wants the energy of children before puberty, because we see puberty as a chemical change, but actually it's an energetic change which manifests as a chemical change as well. And therefore, they are obsessed with the energy of children before puberty. This is why there is such a massive ratio of people in the upper echelons of society, as they call themselves, and paedophilia. Because what is happening is that the energy of children is being drawn off from the child during sexual abuse. And these entities in the hidden are feeding off that energy. And when they sacrifice children, and they create these terror in the children. These children and the child's energy, prepubescent, is being generated from the terror of the child, and the entities in the unseen are feeding off this energy, and that's why they talked about sacrifices to the gods. The child physically was being sacrificed, yes, but the real sacrifice was the energy of the child, the terror of the child, and the prepubescent energy of the child. And this is still going on today. In the ancient world, they could do it openly because society accepted it. Once society developed enough to say that this is outrageous, we're not having this, it went in the hidden. And this is why, over the years, I've met people who've operated at a deep level of this hidden hand in these government agencies, who've told me consistently about rituals that they have experienced and observed as part of it, where children are sacrificed. And when you talk to them about the number of these rituals worldwide, you start to realize where at least some, not all, of course not, but where at least some of these children that go missing actually end up.
Well, I know, for example, about research of Kevin Annett.
Right, in Canada,
yeah. He made a research about Native American people in Canada, about missing and kidnapping these children. So, is it happening more to non-white race? I mean, like you said, in Africa with black children, and in America with Native American people. So, is it more with non-white race, or?
No, it's there are certain blood types that they concentrate on, but people of all kinds are drawn into this. But two of the main blood types they want in North America, they want Native Americans, but one of their real focuses in all this are blonde-haired, blue-eyed children. See, this whole thing about the master race in Germany and all this stuff, it all comes in the end to this, because the different blood types, different genetic types, have different constituents in the blood. And so there's some that they want more than others, and blonde-haired, blue-eyed. I mean, you know these mind control projects that I've written extensively about, like MK Ultra, and that if you want hard evidence, that's been accepted to exist even in the mainstream. The scale of it, the fact it's still going on, of course, is not accepted. But there's an aspect of that MK Ultra mind control program where they create the Manchurian candidates and the people that do assassinations because they're programmed to do them and otherwise wouldn't have done them. People like Sirhan who's supposed to have killed Bobby Kennedy. When you look at that story, the official story is ludicrous. The aspect of MK Ultra that I'm talking about is called Project Monarch, and that is almost totally focused on blonde-haired, blue-eyed people. Blue-eyed children.
When you speak about that, I just remembered when I was a child, my grandmother told me, be careful when you will be in another country, because these kind of children are kidnapped.
Yeah.
With blonde hair.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and it goes back a long way. Mm-hmm. It's something to do with I mean, energy, blood, they're just different expressions of the same thing. So if you look at a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person or child, the blood is a certain type because of the genetic type. So the Satanists that in our reality perform the ritual, they drink the blood of the sacrifice. And the entities outside of the world of the sea, they're feeding off the energy of the sacrifice, because when people get into emotional states, whether it's fear or any other emotional state, they are giving off a particular frequency. And these can be measured. And fear and terror is a frequency that these entities and the hidden want to feed off. And therefore, if people can be pulled into this state of terror and fear, then it's lunch, basically, in terms of energy. And of course, if you look at the world, and you look at the world wars, you look at what's happening in the Middle East now, you look at what's happening in terms of people's suffering, people's hunger, manufactured terrorism, constant anxiety, stress, fear, because of the lifestyles that people live. It's all generating this energetic signature that these entities feed off. And it was interesting to me that I've been talking and writing about this for a long time. And a few weeks ago, I got sent a piece of writing by Rudolf Steiner. Of course, he was a deep esoteric thinker and created the Steiner School education system, which seeks to awaken the child to its true self rather than program it with the state's version of everything. And the person who sent me it had translated this from the German. And of course, Steiner died in 1925. But in this, in this writing, he was describing how entities in the unseen, malevolent entities in the unseen, were seeking to pull people into this, quote, materialistic, low vibrational state, so they could feed off them. And if people wanted to stop feeding the beast, in effect, they needed to get into an emotional state that was beyond the frequency of fear and beyond the frequency of anxiety and all these things. And then you talk to people like Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman, who will tell you the same story about how the entities that they call the Chitahuri are feeding off human fear. It's a constant common theme, what's going on, and sacrificing is part of it. And the sacrificing of children is that which they want most in terms of feeding off the energy of humanity.
Okay, thank you. Now I will ask for some other story. There is a TV series, Jesse Ventura Conspiracy Theory, about 2011, 2012, and you have been in one part with Jesse Ventura and Alex Jones, and I think you remember.
Yeah.
And you spoke about these reptilian and lizard things, and you were arguing that they claim to you that you are distracting people with these things from the real political situation.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
How you deal with it?
Let me start with this. First of all, Alex Jones came on to me and said, "Look, this conspiracy theory show want to get you on, Jesse Ventura." I said, "Well, okay, yeah, fair enough." And they want to talk about the reptilians. I said, "Oh, fair enough." So I went on a tour of Australia and New Zealand, and then and left New Zealand very ill, and flew to Cleveland, where I spent the next 4 days in bed, very ill. And Jesse Ventura wanted to come up to the Cleveland event where I was talking on the Saturday to interview me.
This year?
No, this is a few years ago when this interview happened. And I was feeling really ill, but I thought, well, okay, come. And at that time, Jesse Ventura, who always seems to talk about himself in the third person, which I find very strange, said that he was coming up on the train from Minnesota because Jesse Ventura was never going to fly again because of the pat downs and stuff that was starting at the airports. With I bet he has flown since. Anyway, he turns up, and I got out of bed and went in there early, and I was going to do this interview before speaking for 10 hours, and I'm absolutely shattered, tired because of the illness. Anyway, I'm in this dressing room and I'm hearing Jesse Ventura in the next room. So I said to his producer, I'll go in and have a chat and say hello to Jesse then. Oh no, he said, don't. No. Jesse doesn't like talking to people before the interview. And having been in television, I started to work this one out. And then we go downstairs into this room, and all the cameras are ready, right? And I said, "Where's Jesse?" He says, he doesn't like to talk to people until the cameras roll." I thought, I bet he does, but he doesn't want to talk to me. Why? So I sat down and I thought, I know what's bloody coming here. And so Jesse Ventura, they said, "Action!" Jesse Ventura then walks into the room like something out of Shrek, and sits down, right? And then starts having a go at me about reptilians. And I've never seen one. I said, well, so they can't exist then? Nothing you've never seen can not exist, you know? It's like crazy. And it starts having a go at me. I'm probably the only person ever on conspiracy theory that he's actually ever had a go at. And this is where we're coming from. And I had to be doing it for the money, right? This is where we're coming from. Jesse Ventura is one of those people, and there are vast numbers of them in the so-called alternative media, that are actually what I call mainstream light. They go so little into the alternative, they're almost imperceptible from the mainstream. And therefore, they are in a box, they're in a perception box. And so anyone who is saying the sort of things that I'm saying, because that cannot accept it possible to be true, and it can't be bothered to look at the information, it can only come to two conclusions. One, the guy's freaking mad, or he's doing it for the money. And as I said to Jesse Ventura in one of these answers, I'm talking for, it was then 9 hours in a minute, and I explain it all, just stay and watch. And he said, 9 hours? Watch for 9 hours? And I thought, yeah, I know what you're saying that, because I guess your attention span must be about 9 seconds, basically. And anyway, so what they do, and I stood up and they said, get on with it, this is ridiculous in the end. Because it was a complete setup. And here we have a person who claims to be part of the alternative media, being part of a setup who's someone that has been in this alternative media before he ever knew it existed. 26 years ago I started. So what happened then? Because it's Time Warner, True TV. They then go away and the stuff's taken away and they edit it in the most extraordinarily manipulative way. And this guy, I mean, I live in a 1-bedroom apartment on the Isle of Wight, not because I'm pure, but because I like it. That's all I want. This guy lives in a frickin' mansion, and then has the nerve to say in the voiceover that I must make $2 million a year. Evidence? Zilch! Pulled out of the ether. And it was a total discrediting job. And do you know something? Because Jesse Ventura really doesn't understand the totality of what's going on, and the massively expanding number of people that are open to something beyond where he doesn't want to go. He didn't realise that this was actually committing credibility suicide with a vast number of people. And I'll tell you the punchline of all this. A little bit later, he's got a radio show, I know he still has. He had a guy on called Roddy Piper. Roddy Piper was an American actor. He's an American actor and former wrestler, which is why he got in connection to the former wrestler Jesse Ventura. And he's interviewing him, right? And he's interviewing him in part of this interview about a film called They Live. Now, They Live came out a considerable number of years ago now, and it was produced, and everything to do with it was done by a guy called John Carpenter, whose movie-making history tells me that he has a very good idea of what's going on. And They Live was about a race of non-humans that were taking over the world by hiding behind human bodies, which is basically exactly what I'm saying. And in the film, Roddy Piper, who plays the lead, finds these sunglasses that have been specially made that you can see the alien part, and so he puts the sunglasses on, and now he's seeing humans, but he's also seeing aliens, invariably in positions of power, like the president, who are actually not human when you can look through these glasses. Yeah. So they're talking about this with Jesse Ventura, and Roddy Piper says, yeah, he said, They Live wasn't a movie, it was a documentary. And he said, and there's a guy in England called David ICKE, and he's describing how it is. And Jesse Ventura, yeah, I had a run-in with that guy. Yeah, make yourself look an idiot. But this is an interesting point in that the alternative media is not one thing. The alternative media is a vast spectrum from people like Ventura, who are barely different from the mainstream, across to people like me that question everything. And thus I get as much abuse from great chunks of the alternative media as I get from the mainstream. Because, you know, as people like Socrates and Confucius have said, that wisdom is knowing how little we know. And thus, if you close your mind, whether it's here or here or here, and say here and no further, you are cutting yourself off from more that there is to know. Because the thing that we can say without any chance of challenge is that whatever we know or think we know, there's always vastly more to know than we know or think we know. And so if you shut yourself off and say here or no further, then you're basically putting yourself in a cul-de-sac where you're going nowhere. And what's going to happen is that part of the alternative media that is currently stuck in its own concrete perception and here and no further is going to have to move, because the cutting edge is moving and it's getting further and further away from that part of the alternative media that will not go out of the world of the scene.
Okay, I have two more short questions.
Okay.
One is really specific. Probably you know about some letter from Albert Pike to Cardinal Mazzini about 3 world wars.
Right.
So the question is if the letter is real, because the present time is confirming.
Right.
Yeah, it's happening by the letter. But do you have some special information? It is real or it's fake? It was created later.
Well, let's just look at again. Let's put the dots together. First of all, it's claimed that this very high Freemason in America, Albert Pike, who was partly responsible for the creation of the Ku Klux Klan. So he was a lovely man, and he is supposed to have written this letter to Giuseppe Mazzini in 1871, predicting these 3 world wars that were going to transform global society. This was revealed in the 1950s by a man called Carr, who was a former Canadian naval intelligence agent. That he worked in that field. So what the letter described about World War I was accurate. Mm-hmm. What it described about World War II was accurate. However, this was revealed in the 1950s, so what was said about World War I and World War II is irrelevant. But World War III had not happened, and it was described in this letter. And it was described how it would come out of the Middle East. It would be triggered by basically a clash between what he called political Zionism and the Muslim world. And that vortex would pull in other nations into this big war. He also said that in the run-up to this Third World War, they, i.e. that which he represented, would, quote, unleash the nihilists. And if you look at the definition of nihilism It is absolutely describing ISIS and these Islamic terrorists that are there now. You're right. What Pike described, or is said to have described, about the Third World War, which is the only thing relevant about the letter, appears to be happening. And I've been writing and saying now, since way back, that the plan in this Third World War is to pitch the West against Russia and China. When I started saying it, there was no evidence in the public arena that there was any such thing happening. But now look at it. You've got, a few months ago, you've got the Pentagon announcing that the biggest threat to world peace was Russia, the second biggest threat was China.
We hear it from our television every day.
You've got Russia being systematically demonized. I mean, you know, there's a hack into the Democratic National Convention emails to expose that they were stitching up Sanders on behalf of Clinton. And it's the Russians, you know. I mean, where are we going? I burnt the toast, it's the Russians. I've got a flat, it's the Russians. Everything, it's the Russians. It's so blatant and pathetic. And then you've got, of course, what's happening in Ukraine, which was a US-instigated coup called the People's Revolution. And then you look at China. China is like Russia, supporting Assad, more in the background, although more vocal about it in recent days. And you've got Russia in there with warplanes supporting Assad. You've got America and Turkey and France and Britain. So that area within Syria is a powder keg waiting to go off. And you can see that what's happened in recent days with the Russians again being blamed for, or the Russian stroke Assad being blamed for bombing a UN aid convoy with no evidence whatsoever. In fact, the UN went with the US explanation it was Assad or the Russians, and then started backing off because it couldn't support the evidence. You have the attack on the Syrian troops against international law by the Americans, and then they say, well, it was an accident. And you having this diplomatic situation now where the Americans have said, we're not having any more diplomatic relationships over Syria with Russia. You've got this Ash Carter fella in the Defense Secretary in America saying that they have to consider rewriting the nuclear playbook in relation to what's happening with Russia. And you've got this State Department spokesman, John Kirby, the latest dummy to be wheeled out to talk nonsense to the world's press, who was saying that if Russia stays there, Russians will be going home in body bags. There could be terrorist attacks in Russian cities and so on. And that was not a prediction. That was clearly a threat, and that's how the Russians took it. So you're seeing this situation emerging in the very area of the world that Pike talked about. So, I mean, you know, if people want to dismiss it, it was all a hoax, it didn't really happen, that letter. Well, whoever said it did happen was some prophet. That's all you can say when you look at world events. And of course, in the South China Sea, and now in North Korea and South Korea, you've got the conflict between, verbal at the moment, between America and China over who owns what in the South China Sea. You've got a similar conflict going on between Japan and China over what's in the East China Sea. And this week, the Americans have announced that they are planning to put in a missile defense system into South Korea, which of course, well, people might say, well, it's just a defense system, but hold on. Once you've got a defense system from incoming missiles, you have the potential for a first strike without worrying about the return fire. So actually,
it's the same situation in East Europe.
Yeah, exactly that. With what they were trying to do in Poland, etc. So and now China have come out and said, look, South Korea and America are going to pay dearly if they start messing with us over in terms of what's happening in North Korea. So you could, and then of course in even more recent times, you've got this conflict breaking out between India and Pakistan, and it's all orchestrated. So when you look at the situation with the American presidency, well, both of them would be front people for this. Whatever some of the alternative media claims about Trump, they're going to be very embarrassed if he gets in. But if Clinton gets in, her first priority, as you can see from many of her speeches in the election campaign, castigating Putin and Russia, her first priority is going to be quickening the process to this Third World War. Like I say, if the Pike letter was made up, whoever made it up was a serious prophet, because it seems to be unfolding before our eyes.
Well, there is a lot of secrets which are waiting for research. Do you have some special interest about some topic which you are researching now, or which you would like to research? Is there a special area where you would like to know more?
Well,
because it's a lot of things.
Well, I mean, what I do is connect dots. Therefore, the number of topics that I research is enormous.
Oh, yes.
But one that people really need to know about is the transhumanist agenda. I go into this in Phantom Self, which is just coming out in ICKE, and I'll go into it on Saturday in some detail. And that's the plan, to get technology inside people, not least in the brain, and not least nanotechnology that we talked about earlier, smart dust and stuff, which will connect the human conscious mind and the human processes of the brain to technology, to what Kurzweil calls the cloud. And Kurzweil is openly talking about the fact that from 2030 onwards, and we're in 2016 now, humans will be connected to the cloud. And that as time goes on, the cloud will do more and more of the thinking, i.e. artificial intelligence, will do more and more of the thinking of humans until there's no human left as we know it. And the reason that they are being so open about it is they're selling it on the idea that it will make us superhuman. What it will make us is subhuman. It will make us nothing more than a computer terminal on their technologically created cloud/internet. And people need to understand that, because all this stuff with smart technology, getting people addicted to it, moving them on to things that they have on their bodies, like wearables, they call them, your smartwatches and your Google Glass and all this stuff. And now they're moving to the next stage, all steps carefully planned, which they're calling implantables. And I read an article in late 2015 in Forbes magazine in America, where they were predicting that in 3-4 years, wearables will be as common as the other stuff. And that's how they're getting technology inside us. By this process, you hold it, you get addicted to it. Okay, you wear it, now we're on the body. Now we go to implantables, now we're in the body. Done. And it's so important to get this out to as many people as possible because of the speed that this is happening. And the way that people are becoming so addicted to technology that they will queue in the middle of the night to be one of the first to get a piece of technology that is only there to enslave their minds, ultimately. And so when I talked earlier about Facebook, Google, YouTube, all being part of this, you can add Apple as well as Microsoft. You can add Apple to that number, because they are fundamentally involved in this as well.
Okay. Well, I would have a lot of other questions, but we will hear more on Saturday.
Okay.
In your books.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
No problem. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.